So let me see if I can connect celebration and storytelling to the topic today for my little talk, for our little talk. Because really together, I'd like to spend about 12 minutes here with you to go through a little bit of this topic in a way that's enriching and meaningful to each of you. The topic is engaging in work and how we as individuals and as leaders and supervisors engage people in work. This topic is very appropriate for a Toastmasters audience because each of you is here and engaged in our meetings and in our club on a regular basis. Now let me connect storytelling to this. One way that you engage people, and in fact the most important cultural form in any human culture, is narrative. Narrative are the stories that we tell each other and we tell the next generation. And from those narratives, we get clues about our beliefs and our values, and we impart values through the narratives. And those narratives that we share with each other, those stories, which predate our writing and our other technical forms which I use today, including blogging, to make this particular project happen. Way back when we sat around together and began to talk, we used these stories to make our common culture something that we could share with each other. And we became invested and engaged in those stories. And we look to them when we don't know how to act. And we ask ourselves, what is right? And what should we do? And we learn that from our storytelling and our narratives. And that's still true today. I saw a television show one time which was unimportant in and of itself, but a young girl was going off to college, and her smart-aleck older brother, who had no interest in college, was watching her pack and panic over the idea of leaving her small town and going to the big city of Boston to go to some elite college. And he said, "Don't worry, you were all raised by the same television shows." And that was true a generation ago. Today's generation is being raised by the internet and other sorts of cultural forms. And so today I'm going to use the internet to present to you a little about the topic of engagement at work. And central to this, and I'm going to keep going back to this, is this idea of intrinsic motivation. What motivates you? So let me get started in the proper order. Let me tell you why we're here and what I'm going to do. So, why? A purpose. And what? A task. This is really important to me because in the U.S. Army, the organization I work in, we've identified this idea of task and purpose and this construct around it of mission command as a way that we lead people and organizations to accomplish missions. Inherent in the concept is that if I give you a task to accomplish and a purpose, you're going to self-manage and determine how to accomplish that within the limits of what you've learned. Now, we have some common stories that we all live by. It's called doctrine. Doctrine are the stories we tell ourselves in the military that give us common touch points to understand concepts like command and control or leadership or other sorts of things. But let's get down to a level that's really meaningful for us. So, we're going to talk about the sorts of things that allow us to engage audiences and then as individuals to engage in work. Now, I want to go in that order. I want to talk about audiences first because here in Toastmasters, engaging the audience is critical. So I have an obligation to engage you. How many people here got my email this week about the blog? And keep your hand up if you actually went to the blog. And if you actually read one blog post. More than one blog post. That's okay. I didn't do anything to really motivate you to do that. I depended on your intrinsic, internal motivation to want to read that. If you didn't want to read that in today's world, it doesn't matter. It's still there, and when you become motivated to read it, you can go find it. The real question is, how could I have motivated you? In the upper left corner you see a heart, a carrot, and a stick. Does everybody know the story that we tell about carrots and sticks? We talk about motivating people by holding out the carrot, a positive reward, or by taking the stick and using it, as you might imagine, as a negative reward in order to change people's behavior. And that works. It works in a very limited way. Sticks and carrots work. Hungry people will do things for food. People who have no option but to be beaten with a stick will do things to avoid being beaten with a stick. Carrots and sticks work. But what truly motivates us to put our heart and our soul into our work? It's something more than carrots and sticks. It comes from the heart. Chuang Tzu has talked about this. How to be happy in your work. And that formula is what, Chuang Tzu? What do we do to be happy in our work?
So I think that everything to engaging in the role or the hammer, the focusing, in the case is to prepare the thing, it makes you happy for to engage or to participate in, to make happy in the process.
We dig into our work, we do work, and we gain happiness because we find joy in the work that we do, in the accomplishments and other sorts of things. Now, obviously everybody needs to make a living. But for a lot of the sort of work that we do today, once you get past the essentials for life, what determines whether or not that you put in that additional effort and truly engage in the work is the intrinsic motivators that you find within the work. And these are things like autonomy. How much do you get to decide about what work you do? Studies have shown that people who make a public and effortful commitment to do something will follow through in much greater levels and degrees than people who don't. In my organization, we hold a stand-up meeting in the morning and we talk about what we're going to do in that meeting. And one of the reasons why is because when you commit that you're going to do something to the rest of the team, you're much more likely to do it. Why? There's psychology behind it. We want to appear consistent to others. Belonging. You do things to be a member of the team. Be part of the process, part of the organization, part of the club here at Toastmasters. But beyond that, people are curious and like to play and actually like to learn and to demonstrate mastery over things. Arnie did not learn to be Arizona's fancy fiddle champion because he was beaten with a stick and offered a few measly carrots to move him along. And his goal to be the premier international speaker in Toastmasters this year is not motivated by carrots and sticks, nor is Tatiana's dedication to the club and the way that she felt taking the skills that she developed in Toastmasters and took to her meeting today. Those were not carrots and sticks. Those were things that came from within, that came from the heart, that were developed internally. People want to have meaning in their work and know that their work is meaningful. Those are intrinsic motivators. Now, in my blog I said very clearly, I believe extrinsic motivators are necessary. Absolutely necessary. But they're not sufficient. So let's get to this idea of engaging audiences. And I'm going to provide a handout afterwards for everyone that shows some of these liberating structures. And I have a few. I've already given one to Tatiana because she commented on my blog. But you right now have an opportunity to earn one copy of the Liberating Structures book from Group Jazz. And you can do that by raising your hand and offering to tell us a little about Liberating Structures. Karen.
About liberating structures?
Yes.
Oh. Well, I think one really great liberating structure is improv. And this is kind of an example of that. And it's a great way to actually get someone motivated to think outside of the box, to solve problems in a different way, and to maintain harmonious relationships.
Excellent. And in fact, improvisation is one of those liberating structures. So what are liberating structures about? We usually engage audiences with various types of presentations or techniques. We stand up and give information briefings or status briefings or those types of things. And those structures are typically too restricting and they don't bring the audience into it, even if you have questions afterwards. Or we try to have these freewheeling open discussions or brainstorming sessions. And there the structure is too loose. So what liberating structures are a set of tested methods for providing microstructures that you can build your audience engagement around, your worker engagement and workforce engagement around, that are going to allow you and the group to be creative, interactive, participatory together. I've given 2 speeches where I've used liberating structures. In one I asked you to do an evaluation in 6 words. In another, I asked you to engage as individuals, as teams of 2, and as teams of 4 in recommending how we can bring new members into our organization. And the video that Arnie made of those is there on the blog for those who are interested. There's another liberating structure, so I want to take this back to my particular work, that I find very interesting. It's called Wicked Questions. And the idea is, if you can find a paradox in some aspect of your work that you have to overcome in order to achieve the work, then you're at the heart of something very important. And so in this case, my wicked question is, how can leaders stay in command and out of control? And you remember I mentioned this mission command construct. This question was posed by Admiral Van Riper about a decade and a half ago. He said the modern world, the nature of command and control, and military hierarchical organizations and other things is changing with the technology and other things. The ability to actually control all of the people and all of the things that are out there on the battlefield doesn't exist. The ability for an individual to personally have all the knowledge or to use his staff to develop that knowledge doesn't exist. So we as leaders in the military have to learn to be in command and out of control. That sounds like a paradox, and it is. And we can apply wicked questions as a structure to examine that as a group, to figure out how we deal with it. So moving right along, and keeping in mind as we do this, that intrinsic motivation is at the heart of things. And it's intrinsic when you engage in activities for the enjoyment of the activity. So I said somebody else has a chance to win this. Name one innovative structure that we haven't talked about so far. Anybody? Okay, if you put a comment on my blog about an innovative structure, about a liberating structure you've used, then you can earn this. And if you're interested in all of the technical details, for those of you who are technically oriented, I have some of the technical information from the popular book Intrinsic Motivation at Work here. This actually includes some of the science that goes back over 20 years about how psychologists and others, economists, have looked into what motivates people. And that's available free. You don't have to answer a question for that one. So let's move on and talk about this idea of self-managing. And at the heart of it is that you choose the behaviors to accomplish the tasks that you're going to accomplish. And in most sophisticated, complicated work